there is nothing really we do in society that we say, we do that slow, that sounds really appealing. He's slow. He eats slow. Maybe that is a good thing because he is savouring his food. Other than that, being slow is usually not a compliment. How about you write slow? You are a slow writer. And if you're a slow reader, you are not very smart. If you are slow, they play slow. I'd like to think they play effectively.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by Jonathan DeTuno. So thank you to Jonathan for being today's Patreon sponsor. If you want to be a sponsor of the show and help support the program, head across to patreon.com/redrock_bball. Coincidentally, my name is Josh Lloyd and my Twitter handle is redrock_bball. So go ahead and follow me over there. And we're going to talk about all of these 6 games that happened on Tuesday, and we're going to preview a very, very busy 10-game Wednesday in the NBA. So
let's get to it.
I will indeed get to it. We'll start off with all the action that went down on Tuesday. Actually, you know what? We won't start with the action that went down on Tuesday because this is something that I need to do. We're going to talk about the All-Star Reserves, or who my picks are for the All-Star Reserves. I gave my All-Star starters last week, and then the official ones were announced. So basing it on who the starters actually were that were announced, I'm giving my All-Star Reserve picks, and I'm sure that they won't be 100% accurate, but here you go. Here's my thoughts. In the Eastern Conference, Johnny Wall and Isaiah Thomas are 2 of the guards that are picked. The other two, okay. This is what you got to do. You got to pick 2 guards. You have to pick 3 front court players and 2 wild card guys. So Wall, Isaiah Thomas, and Kyle Lowry are automatic ins, but 2 of them count as guards, 1 as a wild card. So we've got Wall and Thomas as the 2 guards. The front court, Kevin Love, Paul George, and Joel Embiid. They're my 3 front court players. And my 2 wild cards are Kyle Lowry and Kemba Walker. Now, Paul Millsap's probably a little bit stiff to miss out on this team, but that's the way that I see these reserves. Again, if you've got any disagreement with that, let me know and tell me who you would have in place of, I'd say probably the most controversial pick in there is probably going to be either Kemba or Embiid, one of those 2 players. So let me know who you would have in ahead of either of those 2 guys in the Eastern Conference. In the West, Russ Westbrook, obviously he is in. DeMarcus Cousins, Marc Gasol, and Rudy Gobert are my 3 front court players. Chris Paul is my other backcourt player, but he is obviously not going to be able to play. Gordon Hayward and Draymond Green are my 2 wild cards, and then I've got to replace Chris Paul. I thought hard about this one. This was probably just me being somewhat of a dick, but I thought, okay, what do I do with Paul? Do I replace him with another guard? And I looked at all the previous injury replacements in NBA history, and they're not like for like replacements. They'll be bigs for smalls, smalls for bigs, bigs for bigs. So it's not a necessity that a guard goes out, so you have to replace him with another guard. Nikola Jokic, I think, has to be in consideration. Now, he's no way of getting into this spot. The other guys that I would have had here in conversation here would be CJ McCollum or Mike Conley, but Conley's missed a fair chunk of games with that broken back. But Jokic is doing things that are quite ridiculous. You look at, in terms of, he has the number 1 offensive rating in the entire NBA. He is a top 20 player in win shares per 48. He's a top 20 player in box score plus minus. Everything that he is doing, and this is coming after a slow start to the year where he's played out of position and off the bench, everything that he is doing should scream All-Star. There is absolutely 0 chance that he gets into this All-Star game. I acknowledge that. No chance in the world that Nik Jokic gets into this game. But looking at the numbers and looking at the other players who are in consideration for that spot, as I said, I brought it down to Jokic, I brought it down to McCollum, I brought it down to Mike Conley. They were my 3 guys. I find it hard to really argue with what Jokic has been doing. And yeah, I know it's been 2 months. But as I said, how do you weigh those 2 months which have been, frankly, dominant, as opposed to someone who's maybe been not quite as good for a little bit longer time? Or you consider Conley, who has missed this time with his back injury. Let me know what you think about this spot. it would go to Chris Paul, obviously, so this is my injury replacement, but I believe that Jokic has had a good enough season so far to be in consideration for this All-Star spot, although I acknowledge there is no chance that he is getting this spot. This is just me being, what's the right word? Me being contentious? Yeah, maybe that's the right word. Maybe I'm just trying to throw some controversy out there. But the way that he is playing is, and all Denver fans will know this, and I'm sure all Denver fans will agree with me, that he should be an All-Star. You can't find I can't find a reason to put him in ahead of Boogie, Gasol, Gobert, Draymond, none of those guys. Russ, obviously, Gordie Hayward, no. But the next tier down, Klay Thompson's another one that's in consideration there. I think that Jokic has been way more impactful than what Klay has been this season. So that's it. That's the way I've got my lineup. So let's recap. In the East, John Wall, Isaiah Thomas, Kyle Lowry, Kemba Walker, Kevin Love, Paul George, Joel Embiid. In the West, Russ Westbrook, Chris Paul, DeMarcus Cousins, Marc Gasol, Rudy Gobert, Gordon Hayward, and Draymond Green, with Nick Jokic being the injury replacement for the injured Chris Paul. Let me know where you differ in my lineups there. Who would you have in? Who would you have out? And tell me how dumb I'm being for putting Nick Jokic into that team, please. I beg you, because I know that it's dumb, but I just want him in there. And this is my show, so that's what I'm doing. I'm putting him in there. I obviously have no weight in selecting All-Star reserves, but if I had a coach's ear, I'd be essentially whispering Jokic into that ear multiple times. Let's talk monstrous lines of the night. Coincidentally, it's Nikola Jokic, and I did those All-Star reserves before today's game, so this was not just a big prelude for me to jump in and say, yeah, I'm putting Jokic in the All-Star game, so that it ties in with the monstrous line of the night. I did these picks before today's games, and Jokic then went out in what, it could have made me look dumb, to be honest, today's game. He's going up against Rudy Gobert. He struggled the last time against Gobert. Nearly every center in the NBA struggles against Gobert. Jokic didn't. He shredded him, really. 23, 11, and 6 for Nick. 2 steals, 3 blocks, 9 of 16 from the field, 5 of 5 from the line. There was a comment up on Basketball Monster today from N. Ritchie. I believe that's Nathan who listens to the show, I think. Nathan said, early prediction, is he drafted in the top 12 next year? How do you find an argument that he's not? Over the last month, he's the 4th best player. How do you look at this? Over the last 2 months, he's the 14th best player in 28 minutes. In the last month, he's 4th in 30 minutes. 4th in 30 minutes. Play him 33 minutes. Where the hell does it end for this guy? In that last month, the numbers that have made him the 4th best player. 23 points, a 3, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.9 blocks, 61% from the field, 84% from the line. These are ludicrous numbers. Would you feel comfortable taking him in the first round? That's where you get into the conversation. Like, how confident are you in doing that? I don't know. At this point, I wouldn't be. But there's no way he's escaping the top 20. There's zero chance he's not going in the second round next year. There's zero chance he's not going in the top 15, I believe. He is just putting up the sort of numbers that, honestly, they're even beyond what my wildest dreams were for him heading into this season. I had pretty high hopes for him. But these numbers that he's putting up now, and even in under 26 minutes a game for the year, he is the 36th ranked player. And that's with 2 months or 6 weeks of Mike Malone showing that honestly, his decision-making process is fairly flawed. Credit to Malone for realizing that he stuffed up and making the adjustment. And what do you know? Play your best players in the right spots. Your team actually starts playing well. It's a novel concept. But, majority of NBA coaches don't seem to get that. Malone did realize it. He's doing it. He's running everything around what Jokic can do, and it's paying off in a big way. Huge win for the Nuggets today against the Jazz as well. So clearly he is the young gun of the night as well, given that it is his second season. So Jokic grabs himself a monstrous line and a young gun of the night. Been honestly ridiculous. The waiver wire line of the night, Jamal Crawford. There is zero chance that Jamal Crawford is not getting 6th Man of the Year votes now after this game. Zero chance. Yes, it was against the Sixers, so maybe not many people were paying attention, but he's getting votes. Guarantee it. They're going to be wrong, but he's getting those votes. 27 points for Jamal Crawford, 6 triples, 1 rebound, 2 assists, 1 steal, but was red hot, 9 of 14 from the field, which is great for Jamal, and 3 of 3 from the line. I say it's great because over the last 2 weeks, he's been shooting under 35% from the field. Don't look at this line and go, oh, Jamal back. He's back. 27 with 6 triples. Yeah, he's back. He's ranked outside the top 200 this year. He's ranked 271st over the last month. He's a player that is a points-only guy that doesn't score points. It's very reminiscent of Aaron Aflalo. Oh, you know what? He goes there, he scores. Yeah, he scores below average numbers, like Crawford. Less than 12 points a game on 39% shooting. Like, he's not helping you in any category. He's a negative in every single category. And obviously that has no benefit. And with Blake Griffin returning now, that usage that he may have been able to absorb with both Paul and Griffin gone is not there now because Griffin takes that. And the fact that Austin Rivers is playing very, very well means that hopefully we don't get to see too much more of Jamal Crawford. It was a good night from him, no doubt here, but nothing to see here in terms of being a guy that you need to add or anything along those lines. Let's round things out with the dud of the night, and it goes to Wilson Chandler of the Denver Nuggets. Chandler still with that freaky tattoo on his neck. 3 points. I look at this picture of him, for you guys watching on the video. It looks photoshopped. I know it's not. It just looks so odd. 3 points with 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a 3 and a steal on 1 of 4 shooting for Wilson. He played under 20 minutes. It was not a good game. Now, the previous 2 games for Wilson were pretty good. 18 and 17 points with 7 and 6 rebounds. Very efficient stuff. And he's that guy that's sort of hovering. I still think you want to own him everywhere, but over the last 2 weeks, he's down to under 26 minutes a game. Now, he's been productive in that time. He's a top 70 player in only 26 minutes a night, so that's obviously great. But the fact that the minutes are dipping back down is making it, I guess, somewhat concerning or somewhat worrisome that maybe his value is going to totally evaporate. I don't think that it will, and I think that he's going to remain a 12-team league guy, but he's shifting a little bit closer down to that drop zone area. And I think he almost is there in 10-team leagues. He's not there in 12-team leagues yet. But he is drifting down as we see the Nuggets get healthier, as we see their rotation make more sense, I guess, and the potential of him maybe getting traded at some point as well. I don't think he's getting traded into a situation that's better where he's coming out and playing 30 minutes a night or anything like that. I think that's going to be hard for him to do. But for now, Wilson Chandler's a guy that you do hold on to and just enjoy the production aside from this game, which obviously you wouldn't have enjoyed that sort of production whatsoever. Let's move into the games now. There were 6 of those games that took place on Tuesday. The first one was the grudge match, the Boston Celtics and the Washington Wizards. The Celtics travelled to Washington and they got fairly handily pumped. Isaiah Thomas had a double-double, 25 and 13 in 35 minutes, but wasn't able to turn it on in the fourth quarter and was inefficient. And this is what I do expect happens moving forward for Isaiah. 7 of 19 from the field. Now, he'd been shooting at 55% in games, which there was no way it was continuing, and that was fueling his top 5 rank. This is more realistic. It's still a good game. 25 and 13 with 2 steals is fantastic. But maintaining that level of efficiency was going to be impossible. And just expect over the next month that he is going to come back down and settle in the 20 to 25 zone, I believe. Marcus Smart started in place of Avery Bradley. 33 minutes for Smart. Yeah, horrific shooting, as usual. 4 of 13, but 13 and 5 with 2 triples and 4 steals is useful to almost anybody. You probably do need to punt field goal percentage, but if you are, then there's no reason he shouldn't be owned. Al Horford had 22 points, 2 rebounds, which is horrendous, and 4 assists with a block. Good efficiency, while Jay Crowder, another 3 triples for 17 and 6. He's been shooting the ball so much better lately, Crowder, hitting a lot of threes. And he was in a real slump to begin the year, but playing much better now. Amir Johnson started, played 4 minutes, put up no stats whatsoever. Yet with Amir not getting minutes, Kelly Olynyk still didn't play anything extra. 22 minutes for Kelly at 6 and 3. Brad Stevens is a good coach, yes, but he still has a lot of frustrating traits, and it's been 3 years and still has no idea how he wants to handle the power forward spot. He'll have a run of 4 games of 24 minutes for Amir Johnson, then he'll give Kelly Olynyk 25 and then play him 12 minutes. In this one at halftime, he started Jaylen Brown, who had 8 and 5 in 24 minutes. We've got 6. Jordan Mickey's now in the rotation, even though Tyler Zeller was back healthy. Jonas Jerebko plays 18 minutes. He just never works out what he wants to do with his power forward position, and some of that's a lack of talent, but I think that he's using the talent incorrectly a lot as well. Obviously, Amir Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, none of these guys are 12-team league players. And Jaylen Brown, that's a good sign to see him starting and playing 24 minutes, but I can't see any situation where you would go, quick, let me go grab Jaylen Brown unless your league's 30 teams deep, and in that case, he's already gone. You maybe an 18 or 20 team league, you'd grab him, but even then, his fantasy profile is not appealing really at all. He got some extra minutes in this one, as did James Young, who had 5 points in 13 minutes, and that cost Terry Rozier some of his playing time. Rozier still got 3 steals in his 18 minutes. For the Wizards, Brad Beal, 31 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, and did it on 67% shooting, which is fantastic. A huge night for him, while Johnny Wall went 27, 7, and 7 with 3 steals and a block, and he was a 55% shooter. So big nights from the Wizards' 2 guards. They put up huge numbers here, while Marcin Gortat went back and played some extra minutes, 33 here, 16 and 8 with a steal. Probably his best game, it feels like, in the last couple of weeks for Gortat. He'd been trending down significantly, while Jason Smith was stealing some of those minutes. Now, Smith played just 14 minutes in this one. And the Wizards went smaller in this game, playing more minutes for Kelly Oubre. He had 30 minutes, Oubre, 11 and 3 with 3 triples, a steal, and a block. It was only a small amount of time they played without Smith and Gortat, but in the other games, we'd been seeing very, very little of that happen. Markieff Morris, 19, 11, and 4 with 2 blocks in his 34 minutes, just continues to roll and continues to put up fantastic numbers, does Morris. As for Oubre, back to him, this is good. The minutes are improving. The production's all right, but he's more a 16-team, 18-team sort of a player at this point. Otto Porter, it's disgraceful. Otto Porter took 4 shots. Like, he had a 5% usage rate. For the way that this guy's been shooting all season, he needs to touch the ball more than that. Kelly Oubre doesn't need 10 shots while Otto Porter takes 4. Now, that's on Oubre, that's on Wall, that's on Brooks. Porter needs to be taking the shots more than that. 6 and 4 for him in 31 minutes, and that's been the downfall of him this year. He's been fantastic, don't get me wrong, but on the nights where it goes wrong, it's because he just doesn't take any shots. Tomas Satoransky back in the rotation ahead of Sheldon McClellan after he was eliminated from it yesterday, so once again, coach not being able to commit to anything. Satoransky had 2 points in his 14 minutes, and the bench didn't do a huge amount in this game. Next one up, the San Antonio Spurs and the Toronto Raptors. Good old Pop. Now, if I'm going to go ahead and criticize coaches for lying, as I did yesterday, I'll do it with Pop again now. Kawhi Leonard, he's not really injured. He's got a sore hand, but he's not injured. He's just resting. Cool. So that injury that's not an injury has just cost him 2 games now. One against the Raptors here. We just assumed that he was missing Brooklyn for rest because, well, we didn't assume it. We were told that. That's what Pop said. He's injured, but not really injured. And then he misses again. So, Pop, stop lying. No need for that shit. Now, anyway, without Kawhi, without Tone Parker, without John Simmons, who's had a wrist injury as well. No Powell, no Parker, no Simmons, no Kawhi. The Spurs got a victory on the road against the Raptors on the second half of a back-to-back. A huge performance. Pop also reverted his starting lineup. Dwayne Dedmon was out. David Lee was back in. But neither guy played well. 19 minutes for Dedmon, 7, 4, and 2. 21 minutes for Lee, 11, 5, and 2. It's really hard now to know what Pop's going to do. I still believe Dedmon is the better option for the team, but if Pop doesn't believe that, then it doesn't mean anything for fantasy. So you can have a look at Lee. I don't think he's a must-own 12-team league guy, as we saw here. He didn't have to play too many minutes in this game. But he's been able to score a bit and get some rebounds, and that can be useful. Pat Mills with 2 strong games in a row, 18 points in 30 minutes for Pat, 2 triples, 3 assists, and 3 steals. Has value while Parker is out, but that's it. While DeJounte Murray bounced back after a poor performance against the Nets. 23 minutes for Murray, 11, 3, and 2 with a block. I reckon this guy is going to be really good. And once he goes back to playing 4 to 5 minutes a game, try and acquire him in a dynasty if you can do it for a cheap price. Kyle Anderson started in place of Kawhi, 8, 7, and 4, and he's putting up the sort of numbers that we know that Anderson can do and what he didn't do for the first 3 months of the year. I think part of that comes from the fact that he was playing the 2, and he's more a 3-4. He's a 3.5 rather than a 2. So he was playing out of position and getting blown by defensively with his slowness, and his ability to create wasn't as great in that position. But when he plays the 3 or plays the 4, it's much better for Kyle. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him in the offseason. Davis Bertans, he got some of those extra front court minutes with Lee and Dedmon both not playing well. Bertans had 12 points in 15 minutes, while Aldridge went for 21 and 7 in his 32 minutes on the court. Manu also returned, had 8 points. For the Raptors, Pat Patterson returned. Now, I criticise Pop for lying. Dwayne Casey's bad. He's a bad coach. He makes poor decisions, but he says shit that's just so blatantly weird that I wish... Now, this may have been mentioned by one of the reporters at the press conference. I don't think it was, because if I had been there, this is what I would have been saying to him. Yeah, Dwayne, Patrick Patterson's coming back. Yep, Patterson's coming back. He's not going to be on a minutes restriction. So that's what Dwayne Casey... He's not going to be on a minutes restriction. Okay, that's cool. My question would have been to him then, okay, Dwayne, how come the last time when he came back from that injury, he was on a minutes restriction, then he re-aggravated it, and now you're telling me because he's injured himself twice and coming back, he won't be on a minutes restriction? That sounds like malpractice to me. That's the sort of question that, maybe probably not in as aggressive a tone, but I would be asking him, why would you put him on a restriction the first time, he re-injures it, and then he comes back and you go, you know what, minutes restriction? Stick that up your ass. We're not using you. We're going full steam ahead because it worked so well last time. We were careful last time and it didn't work, so therefore being not careful is the opposite. It must actually work. So that's what he said before the game. Patrick Patterson played. He played 21 minutes. Post-game press conference. Patrick Patterson is on a minutes restriction. Look, was he? Thanks. Thanks for just blatantly outright lying. You don't come into a game and halfway through go, you know what, probably might just put him on a minutes restriction. That's not how it works. It's not how any of this works. Stop talking shit, you idiot. The Raptors made a change to their starting lineup. They put Jared Sullinger in. He played all of 12 minutes and went scoreless. I think you've got to be pretty desperate to have Jared Sullinger in a 12-team league, or even a 14-team league, to be honest. It's going to take him a bit of time, plus he has to compete with Pat, and now Bebe Nogueira has thrown his hat into the ring as being a player who's going to contribute at the power forward spot. I can't see Sully getting anywhere near enough minutes to be a contributor in 12-team leagues, at least not at the moment, and holding what basically accounts to zeros for multiple weeks is not great at this time of year. Speaking of zeros, Damari Carroll played 15 minutes and had 2 points and 4 rebounds. He remains terrible. He was 0 of 6 from the field. He's had a couple of little flashes where you go, maybe he's going to be good. But in general, the overwhelming viewing of him, the overwhelming thought is that he's bad. And he continues to be bad. And I will continue to stake my claim that Norman Powell should start over him. It's not going to happen, but that's what should happen. Carroll is okay to own in 12-team leagues, not in 10s. I wouldn't own him there, but he's okay in 12s. Now, as for Norm, he started in place of DeMar DeRozan. And this is, again, where shit just gets weird in my head. Now, you're in a game where, there was plenty of times where Powell wasn't playing at all this season, but DeRozan's out, so let's play him more than what we would actually play DeRozan. Let's play him 39 minutes. And this is what would happen early in the season. Damari Carroll would play 23 minutes. He'd rest. Powell would come in and play 32. Surely you can find minutes if he's actually better. And I'm not saying he's better than DeRozan, but if he's better than the guy that's ahead, like Carroll, then he can actually play more of these minutes. Now, he had been struggling recently. I'll freely admit that Powell had been struggling, but a lot of that's to do with uncertainty of role and uncertainty of minutes. And he knew what he was doing here, and it was a big night. 16 and 4 with 2 steals and a block on 8 of 16 shooting. Huge. He's going to do, he's not going to do the same, but he's going to have a significantly big role again on Wednesday with DeMar DeRozan out. So look to see what he can do, how he can help your team on that Wednesday if you can slot him into an active spot, because there are 10 games on, so you might not be able to. Terry Ross also stepped up. He had 21 points in 30 minutes, but this is a great examination of what Ross is as a fantasy player. He's been good this year, no doubt about that. He hit 3 triples, he had 2 blocks, a steal, good numbers. But the scoring comes on nights where he gets hot. So he was 6 of 10 from the field here for 21 points. He had 1 rebound and 0 assists. The shot doesn't fall and he goes 3 of 10. Then the scoring and the line looks a whole lot less enticing. And that's why he makes a GPP only guy or GPP main sort of player in DFS, and why he's a streaky guy that you can stream in for 3s, but holding on to him probably is not the right move. Kyle Lowry, Isaiah Thomas style here, 9 of 23 for 39% shooting. He had 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists, which is really good numbers. He had a block, some good stuff from. In fact, well, I'll say it's good stuff, but the Raptors team, there was absolutely no ball movement. 10 assists they had for the entire game, the whole team. Lowry, this is the beginning of the regression for him. I hate to say it because I do like Kyle Lowry, but this is where it's starting to kick in. Jonas Valanciunas had 9 and 13 with 2 blocks in his 29 minutes, while Bebe had 6 and 10 with 2 blocks in his 26. Bebe's fine to own if you know what you're getting from him, but when Patterson's no minutes restriction comes off, then he's not going to play 21 a night, which he did here. He's going to play 30 or 29 a night. When Sullinger's comes off, he's not going to play 12 a night. He's going to play 20 a night. And I'm shit scared that it's going to mean they're going to push Valanciunas to 22 minutes and they're going to push Bebe down to 15 minutes. I think that's going to happen. Maybe not the 22 for Valanciunas, but knowing Casey, that's a huge possibility. But for now, Bebe, for the defensive numbers, for the field goal percentage, for the rebounding, he's going to have value. But we just got to watch what happens with Pat and with Jared Sullinger here. Let's move on to the next game. The Chicago Bulls and the Orlando Magic. Oh, man, the Bulls. The Bulls won. That's great. 100-92. They made a change to the starting lineup. Starting point guard change. Michael Carter-Williams out. Jaren Grant in. But Carter-Williams didn't go from out to on the bench. He went from out to don't bother playing. He went from you're starting to now you're a DMPCD as we keep Rondo as the backup point guard. I can't for the life of me figure that out. Now, Michael Carter-Williams is not good. He has not been good. But what he is he is a very good defender. And Rondo is the opposite of that. And Jaren Grant, he's not much better. Yes, Carter-Williams is a bad shooter. You know what Rondo is? A bad shooter. Rondo has made 1 free throw since December the 6th. 1. He's not attempted a free throw since, I believe, December 16th. He has no ability on offense to do anything. His defense is atrocious, and he should not be in this rotation. Now, as for Grant, I'd like to see what he can do, but the Bulls' best point guard, he wears either number 3 or number 21, and that's what they need to do. Start McDermott, put Mirotic in there, put Denzel Valentine in, start Paul Zipser, but play Jim Butler or play Dwayne Wade as the point guard. And that's what they do for big chunks of the game. Grant played 20 minutes, Rondo played 15. So the other 13 minutes of the game, no actual point guard in there. Get some balls, Hoiberg, and that's just what you do. None of this, we probably should start a point guard because you've started a point guard in the league for years and years, so we probably should start one. Why? Why? What's the problem so that someone doesn't come to you and say, yeah, Hoiberg didn't start a point guard, but he played half the game without one anyway. What's the difference? I know there's people that are idiots that'll say that, but what's the difference? That's what the Bulls need to do. Now, do you add Jaren Grant? No. Do you add Rondo? Of course not. Do you drop Carter-Williams if you own him? Yeah. In a 12, in a 14, he can go. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's back in Rondo's spot pretty quickly. As for Wade, huge night from Wade. 21 and 7, but 7 steals and a block on 39% shooting is not great, and the 23 attempts is definitely not ideal. But getting 7 steals to start the week out is fantastic. Jim Butler, very passive. Only took 14 shots, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists and 3 steals, but still, on a night that wasn't his best, it's a good performance. While Dougie McDermott only saw 17 minutes. Now, it was a productive night from Doug. He had 12 points, he had 4 triples, and that's great. He also had a block, and if this game had been at United Center, I'm sure streamers would have fallen from the sky, because that was the 11th block of Doug McDermott's career. And this is his 3rd season. 11 blocks in 3 seasons. That's why he's not a good fantasy player, because he can't even chip in. Okay, heavy 1 rebound, 1 assist, 0 steals, and a block. And again, 11 blocks for a career. That's Evan Fournier, Jordan Clarkson level. But he does nothing else. He doesn't rebound, he doesn't assist, he doesn't do anything. Chris Felicio was fantastic. 21 minutes for Chris, 12 and 10. No other numbers, but I really like seeing him out there. And at this point, you could easily make the argument that he's better than Robin Lopez. Fred Hoiberg's not going that route just yet. Lopez had 8 and 4 in his 27 minutes, but Felicio is a name to watch. You need to be looking at him in, say, 16 to 18 team leagues and watch what develops with this Bulls team. If Taj gets traded, if Mirotic gets traded, hope not, but depending on what they do, Felicio's the guy to watch because he is coming up. And Mirotic only played 19 minutes here, had 4 points, while Paul Zipser, who was the 6th man in the first quarter, did not play at all in the third quarter. So there is no way for any of these players to get comfortable with roles or to know what they're doing or when they're doing it because Højbjerg doesn't know what he's doing. And this is part of what I discussed yesterday with Jason Kidd. When you have this sort of uncertainty, shit's not going right for you. And I know it's not going right for the Bulls anyway at times, but this is not the way to go about it. Lopez is a decent hold in 12-team leagues, but he's far from strong. Just when you think that coaching weirdness can't get to another level, the Orlando Magic, they made a change to their starting lineup. Yes, they're without Evan Fournier. Yes, the injury to Jody Meeks is more severe now, and he has had surgery. I don't think we're seeing Jody Meeks again this season. In the last game without those two players, CJ Watson started. He played 36 minutes. This game here, DJ Augustine was ruled out with a sprained ankle. So Vogel's idea there is, all right, so what's better than a lineup with 2 power forwards and a center? I know. Let's go with 3 power forwards and a center. So let's play Alfred Payton, and then we'll play Jeff Green, we'll play Aaron Gordon, we'll play Serge Ibaka, and we'll play Nick Vucevic. Now, why you wouldn't stick with the guy who played 36 minutes at shooting guard in the last game, CJ Watson, and I thought did a decent job, why you wouldn't stick with that remains to be seen. And I know the argument can be they didn't have a backup point guard. CJ had to play that role. Well, you know what he could do? He could be the first sub off the bench. He could be the first sub out of the game. Hazonia comes in. Payton comes out after 8 minutes. Watson comes in and replaces him. It's like solving a Rubik's Cube in 10 seconds. You can do that. You don't have to put him on the bench so he can be the backup point guard. The Blazers don't do that. They don't go, oh shit, we don't have a backup point guard. CJ, you better sit on the bench and play 23 minutes only because you're going to be our backup point guard. So that's what happened with CJ Watson. He went from 36 minutes to 23 because he had to play backup point guard. Frank, that's not common sense. Now Jeff Green was all right in this one.
My name is Jeff.
13 and 7 for Jeff. He had a steal. He was 3 of 11 from the field, which is pretty standard Jeff Green. But he was all right. He's a 16 to 18 team league sort of a player. Serge Ibaka also bounced back after a string of poor games. 16 and 8 for Serge, 3 triples, 3 steals and 2 blocks. It's a very big performance. While Nick Vucevic, who'd been under 25 minutes for 2 games in a row, 33 minutes. That is something that I approve of. That is something I do get behind. 20 and 8 with 2 steals for Vuce. Big numbers from him. And that limited Bismack Biyombo to 16 minutes, 2 and 4. Now, Biyombo had been putting up nice numbers. I can't understand why Biyombo is owned in 54% of leagues. There must be 54% of people playing in leagues of 16 teams and try that again. 16 teams and over, because that's where he belongs. Lord Alfred Payton was poor. 38 minutes for Lord, 10, 7 and 5 on 5 of 16 shooting and missed both his free throws. So it wasn't a great night. Still, the minutes are encouraging. The numbers aren't terrible. It just wasn't a good night for him. While Mario Hazonia, I don't know, man. I feel like this guy's just lost 3, 4 and 2 in 13 minutes for Hazonia, while Aaron Gordon had 13 and 6 in 36 minutes. Decent night, but obviously could be better. All in all, there was a lot of confusion in that game. There was no spacing whatsoever. In fact, that game they combined. Now, Steph Curry holds the NBA record for 13 made threes in a game. This game combined for 14 made threes. I watched it for way too long. It was not fun. The Bulls won though, so that's grand. The Clippers and the Sixers, Blake Griffin was back. That forced Ray Felton back to the bench. We'll start with Blake. 29 minutes for him, 12, 11, and 5. The shot wasn't there. That's to be expected. 3 of 11 from the field and 6 of 10 from the line. Obviously, you get him back into your lineups, and that pushed Felton to the bench. He played 17 minutes, 2 points and 3 assists. He was added. See you later. That's it. He's done. Get him out of there. Austin Rivers, the starting point guard. 39 minutes for Austin. 20 points, 4 triples, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal. 50% ownership, less than Bismack Biyombo. He needs to be owned in all leagues. JJ Redick had a good night as well. 22 points with 5 triples. Not much else happening there, just the 1 rebound and 1 assist. And Mo Spates played only 13. He had 9 points, all of them from threes. And he goes back to that very deep league sort of a player. Unsurprisingly, Luke Marmute, after he stuffed the stat sheet in the last game, he put up a 0, 2, and 0 line, and DeAndre Jordan had just 10 points and only saw 31 minutes. He was removed from the game due to a hacker strategy later on by Philadelphia, which actually worked, and the Sixers overcame a massive deficit to come back and win this game. Jordan had 10 points and 20 rebounds in this one here. He'll be better, I believe, for Griffin being back, but Really does miss Chris Paul. That's the guy that really opens things up for him. On the Sixers side of things, love that we saw Nerlens Noel start. Now, Joel Embiid was out. So was Jahlil Okafor. I think that Okafor was going to start if he was ready to be healthy. But what they did do is they announced Noel as the starter before they announced Okafor as being out. Okafor is currently questionable for Wednesday, but I think if Okafor is ready to play, I think that he starts Wednesday. I think that they named Noel as the starter just so they could ease Okafor in if he was going to play. Now, Noel is clearly the better player in my opinion, and he had a fantastic line, 19, 8, and 5 with 2 steals and 3 blocks. It really gets you very interested or very excited thinking, shit, if this guy played 30 minutes a night, I'd be all over him. But he's not going to. That's the thing. He needs to get traded to another team, and realistically at this point, I thought it was almost a guarantee that he was gone, given with the petty bullshit that was going on between him and the team at the start of the year. I thought he was done. At this point, it doesn't feel like it at all. So he's going to be stuck in a 20-minute role for 80% of the season, and then play 30 minutes in the games where Embiid sits. Is that enough to hold on to him? I think you still do at this point, and obviously you do with tomorrow's game coming up. But an Okafor trade doesn't do it for him. It needs to be a Nerlens trade, and he needs to go to a team where he's not playing 20 minutes a night, obviously. Huge night from him, though, as it was a huge night from Richaun Holmes. There is not a better fourth-string center in the entire NBA. 19 minutes for Richaun, 18 points with 3 rebounds and a block. That block was huge on Blake Griffin as well. I've been a big Richaun fan for a while, but he just doesn't play. And that's why he needs 2 trades to become valuable. But if he moved into a backup role, and it will say him and Embiid and Noel and Okafor both went, which some Sixers fans wouldn't be totally distressed about, then he would jump into that 16 to 18 team league consideration. He's a really good player, and if I'm another team, he is a guy that I'm looking at and trying to get into trades. I don't think he's going to be able to sneak it past the Sixers, but that would be the guy I'd be looking at. Bob Cove is a top 75 player this year. After some early struggles, he's killing it at the moment. You're filling up the box score, 14 and 8 in 37 minutes, 2 triples, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and in fact, over the last 2 weeks, he's a 46% shooter. I think he's 38% over the course of the entire year, but the shooting is starting to be rectified, which is what was really hurting him in non-punt field goal builds. He was never a player that should have been dropped in any punt field goal situation at all, because he was still getting numbers even though he legit couldn't hit a single 3 basically for stretches of the year. He's coming back and he's playing well. Ersan Ilyasova had just 10 points in 22 minutes. He battled foul trouble, had 5 fouls there, so that enabled Dario Saric to play 26 minutes. 16 and 8 for Saric, a steal and a block, a good line. I'm not convinced with Saric that he ever becomes a top 80 fantasy player. I think there's a real argument you could make that he starts next year for this team. Ersan potentially leaves. They run a Simmons, number 1 draft pick, Covington, Saric, Embiid lineup, if they're committed to making Simmons a point guard and not a point forward. If they make Simmons a point forward, then there's no way that Saric is even able to have anywhere close to top 100 value. But I'm just not sure that Saric is ever going to be this great fantasy option. His shooting has regressed over the last couple of months. He's a 32% shooter from 3. And it started off pretty good. He was a 34% shooter to begin the year, or higher, actually 36% to start the year. And that has dropped off now. So I'm a little bit worried that he just doesn't do enough or has got a secure enough role to be a good option. And I say this because if you own him in a dynasty league, he's got some pretty good name value. And when he has some big games, players that get overrated, and I'm not calling him overrated, but they get overrated, it might be time to explore a trade. Who can you get back? Can you get back someone who feels like they're going to have more consistent value or a more consistent upside? Because I think that might be a decent way to go. Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot had 7 points and 2 steals in his 13 minutes, really like him, and Sergio Rodriguez came back from a DNP CD to play 20 minutes, and that cut into TJ McConnell's playing time. Spanish Chocolate had 9 points with 7 assists, while McConnell had 9 with 10 assists. McConnell is still the guy to own, and he is still a 12-team league player, in my opinion. All right, let's move on to Minnesota and Phoenix. Gorgie Dieng, after 2 games, subpar games, really had a big one. 16 and 9 in 34 minutes, a steal and 3 blocks, and that's almost the pattern for Dieng this season. 22, 24, 25 minutes, bang, 5 games in a row of 35 minutes and big production. He's sort of all over the place with what Thibodeau does with him. But interestingly, he played 34 minutes and Shabazz Muhammad played 27 as well. Shabazz had 16 points in 2 triples. He's a good stream option for points, and he's a 14 to 16 guy that you can just hold and keep, given this increased role that he's currently seeing. With him getting this increased role, it's impacting what Nemanja Bjelica can do. He played just the 13 minutes for 0 points. Andrew Wiggins hit the game-winning shot to get the Timberwolves over the line, 112-111. Wigo had 31 points on 22 shots, 50% conversion. He hit 2 triples. He had 6 boards. He had 3 assists and 2 steals, and this is good Andrew Wiggins. We all know what bad Andrew Wiggins looks like, but this is a good one. And this is why he does have top 50 potential, top 50 fantasy upside. Townsy, 18 and 10 with 2 steals and a block, a good night from him. While Rick Rubio returned from the unfortunate death of his grandparent, 34 minutes for Rick, 14, 4 and 10 with a steal and a 3. So no concern there with that Chris Dunn scenario, as I expected. 14 minutes for Dunn, who went 2, 3 and 2. And Dunn did okay in that role, filling in for Rubio, but he's not Rubio. And I will still be flabbergasted if the Wolves trade him. I'll be more flabbergasted at them for doing it, not that it actually occurred. And it'll be interesting to see if they, or what they get back in return. But you know, I'm all aboard Rubio, and I think he can be a really good player for plenty of fantasy teams. Zach LaVine didn't quite break out of his slump. 11 points with 4 assists and 2 steals. I'll say it again. Attack him low. Go very, very low on the Zach LaVine owner, and you might get yourself a bargain. For the Suns, Tyson Chandler continues to be amazing. 9 of 9 from the field, 22 and 17 with 2 blocks. Goes without saying that he's a must-own player, and obviously his level of play is impacting Alex Len, except Alex Len played power forward in this game. Obviously, his best position. 11 and 10 in 24 minutes for Len. No other numbers, but he'd been a guy that getting single-digit minutes for a big stretch of time, but getting some extra power forward playing time here with Dragon Bender out of the lineup with a sore ankle.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
Marquise Chris, you would think you might try to give him some extra minutes. And you know what? Maybe Watson was going to, because he did have 4 fouls in his 12 minutes, 5 and 2. He did have a 1-1, but he just can't get out of his own way a lot of the time. And some of it's coaching, but a lot of it's him as well. Eric Bledsoe wasn't quite at his best, 5 of 18 for 18 points and 7 assists, but not a terrible night, while Devin Booker dropped in 26 on 39% shooting. PJ Tucker, a really underrated line here, 8, 6 and 6, 4 steals and a block. I think that Tucker is a guy that you want in 14-team leagues. And his play, and really the general suckiness of TJ Warren is an issue. I don't think you can really continue to hold Warren at this point. Now, if you've got hopes that Tucker gets traded, which seems to be a prevailing thought, I don't think the Suns will necessarily do it, though. I'm not on board with that 100%. If he goes, then a lot's going back to Warren. But I think a lot of Warren's downfall is coming from Bledsoe. And that's not going to change. So I'm a bit concerned about TJ, and I'd be fine with moving on in a 10-team league and probably in a 12-team league as well at this point, which is a shame because he was killing it at the start of the year. The last game of the night, the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. The Jazz go down to the Nuggets. Derek Favors. One of the things that I've been talking about with Favors holding him back, there's 2 things, minutes and field goal percentage. Well, he played just 25 minutes here, but the field goal percentage was fantastic. 73% conversion for 18 points with 5 boards, a steal and a block. That's what we want to see. But the reluctance of Quinn Snyder to close games out with Derek Favors is still a really confusing issue. Boris Diaw got 24 minutes and had 16 points here. I just don't understand why we can't see Derek playing these bigger minutes. I still think he should be owned, but it is a frustrating scenario that he just doesn't seem to put his best players on the court for big stretches of time. Georgie Hill, 17, 3 and 5. Rudy Gobert, not his best night, 11 and 9. He had some foul trouble as well, while Gordie Hayward had a terrible night, 2 of 10 for 9 points. Joe Ingles started, but this is 2 straight games with low minutes for Joe, and Alec Burks is cutting into those. So, Joe Ingles, you grabbed him in a 12-teamer, I reckon you move on. As for Burks, 13 points in 22 minutes. He's fine as a short-term sort of add. I just don't see his upside as being very high at this point, and I don't think that if you grab him, he'll be a player that sticks around on a roster when Rod Hood returns. But some good performances from Alec in a row here. For the Nuggets, Darrell Arthur was huge. 22 minutes for Arthur, 16 and 8 with 3 triples and a steal. A must-own 16-team league guy, in my opinion, while Jameer Nelson started in place of Manny Mudiay. 17, 1 and 7 for Jameer. It was the last game, it was Jamal Murray that put up the numbers. Today it was Jameer Nelson. And neither of those guys are 12-team league guys while Moutier is out. You could consider streaming either one. Nelson for assists, Murray for scoring, but neither of them are strong ads. The Rooster had 11 points, while Gaz Harris in his pretty much standard operating procedure at the moment. Come back from injury, huge game. Next game, just ease it in with 10 points in 27 minutes for Gaz. Still should be owned everywhere. While Ken Fareed played 28 in the start and had 11 and 7. I don't buy that Ken needs to be a must-own player or a 12-team league guy. And the same goes for Fart and Will Barton, who had 5 points in his 22 minutes. All right, let's take a quick break now, and then we're going to be back to preview all the action for Wednesday, where we've got 10 games in the NBA. Alright guys, we're back. Let's talk perfect DFS lineups. On FanDuel, Johnny Wall 49.9 and Jameer Nelson at 28.7. Shooting guard, Dwayne Wade 46.9 and Brad Beal at 39.9. Small forward, Wigo is at 44.7 and PJ Tucker at 34.2. At power forward, Nerlens Noel 45.1 and Nick Jokic at 51.2. And at centre, Tyson Chandler 46.4 for a total of 387 points, and that costs $59,400. On DraftKings, John Wall 52.75, Dwayne Wade at 49.25, and PJ Tucker 34.5. Nerlens Noel had 46, Jokic had 55.25, Jamal Crawford 34.75, Markieff went for 43.75, and Tyson Chandler 48.75 for a grand total of 365, and that cost $49,600. We have got 10 games on. We've got high-priced players all over the place. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jimmy Harden, Russ Westbrook, all the big-name guys are playing. LeBron, Durant. So there's lots of opportunities in DFS to try and get some pretty decent scores happening. Let's see how we go going through these games and talking about them and trying to get some, or make some sense of what's potentially happening. The first game of the night is the Sacramento Kings at the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs are favored by 11. The total is 214. I think we're getting pissed off LeBron here in this game. I think we're getting a smackdown from the Cavs. That might limit what the Stars do, but I also think that they're going to be on such sort of turboness that they're going to put up big numbers before they sit down halfway through the fourth quarter. So they're not guys that I'm avoiding in this situation. At point guard, well, the Kings point guard situation, if you know what's going to happen, please let me know, because it's an up-in-the-air sort of situation. For Darren Collison, he is at 45, and Ty Lawson is also at 4,500 now. But Lawson's been the player who's been outperforming Collison, but he gets less minutes. Over on DraftKings, we're looking at 41 for Ty Lawson, so I really like that as a GPP play. He's averaging 28 points these last three, while Collison's averaging 17. No chance in hell I want to use, that gives me a chance to use this. Yeah, no chance in hell that I want to use Collison, but Lawson, with the way that he's playing, is definitely a GPP guy, but getting 5 minutes less than the starting point guard, if he doesn't tear it up, then what happens to him? Does he play 20 minutes? Does he put up nothing? Given they're the same price on FanDuel, I'm a little bit weary about Lawson there, but in DraftKings where it's $400 cheaper to take Ty Lawson, I've got no issue with using him. As for Kyrie Irving, who dropped 63 against the Pelicans last game, he's at 8,500 on FanDuel and he's at 8,200 on DraftKings. That's a lot of money. 8,500. He is averaging over 40 points in his last 5 and 49 in his last 3. The Kings they're a slight positive for Kyrie in terms of a matchup. There are so many other options out there for point guard that Kyrie would be a GPP only guy, and I don't really think that he's a great cash play, but he's obviously not a horrible one either. At shooting guard, Garrett Temple is at 4,300. I don't think there's any upside in Garrett Temple whatsoever, but that doesn't mean that he's a bad DFS play. It means that he's a very good cash play at 4,300 on FanDuel. On DraftKings at 4,000, there's a little bit of GPP upside there. But he's been, and I don't like Garrett Temple as a player. I don't think he's a very good player. But at $4,000 in a consistent 33-minute role and getting a consistent 23 points a game, which is sort of what he's been doing, I'm all for that. Lock that in, load up on Jims, load up on Yannis, load up on LeBronalds, load up on those guys, and put your Garrett Temple in there, get your 24, maybe it's 26, maybe it's 27, and get your lineup happening that way. So I do really like Temple, which is not a sentence that comes out of my mouth very often. Iman Shumpert's been playing well, but it doesn't really translate to DFS all that well. He's at 4,000 on both sites. His upside's, 25 points maybe? He did have a 30-point game in the last 5, so I'll grant him that. Not really seeing him as being an elite sort of option here in this game. Kyle Korver is the opposite of elite, as is Aaron Aflalo. Despite being priced at minimum salary, he is averaging under 14 points in the last 5 games, and there's a reason that he is at minimum salary. On DraftKings, though, Aflalo at $3,000, which is their minimum, is a little bit interesting. He's playing okay minutes. The matchup is alright. He occasionally has this one game where he goes off. In cash, I would not entertain the thought. But in GPPs, I could maybe get behind it on DraftKings. Maybe. It's a pretty big maybe. Small forward LeBron, let's go, 10,700. LeBron, he's averaging 51 already over the last 3 games. He's pissed. He's taking on the Kings. He's going to be matching up against Garrett Temple or Matt Barnes. He's going to have a fair chance to eviscerate some players here. So, yeah, I'm all aboard. LeBron, he's at 10 grand on DraftKings as well. No issue. One of the better high-price plays on the entire board. I just want to clarify something as well. A lot of people will ask me, and someone asked me this today specifically, who are your top studs that you want to put in your lineup? That's not the way that I do construct a lineup. I don't go and say, who are my high-price guys, stick them in, and then fill the gaps around them. That's not the way I look at it. I try and get my value players in first, like who's in a situation where they feel like it's an almost no-brainer to go for 6x or 6.5x. If there are guys that you look at and go, shit, this situation's brilliant. Norm Powell today, Kyle Anderson the other day, Terrence Jones the other day. They go in first. Those guys fill my lineup up first, and then I'll have a look, and on Basketball Monster we've got that partial lineup optimizer where you put your first 6 guys in, and then it optimizes the last 3 spots. So I'll often do that, put my 6 guys in that I like, choose a few there, and it will say, okay, you've got 3 spots left, and you've got $11,000 on average to spend. And then it will pick the high-price players that fit in. And generally with the high-price players, they're going to put up, if they're a $10,000 player, they're going to put up 40 points or 45 points. And if you're getting all this other value in the other spots, then that's fine. And often there is an array of high price guys who are generally priced to be about 4x or 4.5x. That's how the sites price them. Put them in, and that will help your lineup. I don't start with these guys and say, who do I think's a better option here? Is LeBron, is Harden, is Westbrook? Who's a better option? Unless one of those guys really stands out. I don't look at those high price guys and go, which of these guys stands out as being the best options, or which studs do I start building around? I like to look where the value is and then fit my other guys in around that. Now, some people have different theories behind that, but that's the way that I like to build a lineup, is put the guys in where I go, this is a great spot. I've got to have this guy. I have to have this player in. I have to have Nerlens Noel in. I had to have Nerlens Noel in today. So he's in there. Let's build the rest of it. I had to have Kyle Anderson the other day. With Kawhi out, I had to have LaMarcus Aldridge in. Let's put those guys in, and let's fill the gaps around them. Does that mean John Wall comes in, even though he's at $10,000 and I didn't like the price? Yeah, because I've got that extra cash left over. He's going to get me close to 50, then that's fine. I'm not chasing 6x value on the $10,000 guys. I'm chasing it on the $4,000 to $6,000 guys, putting those guys in, and that's how I build a lineup. So that's a a little bit of a diversion from what I was talking about, but I hope you guys find that useful. LeBron, yeah, he's a good option. Matty Barnes, he had his best game since Rudy Gay was out in the last game, 23 points in 25 minutes at 3,600. He's a GPP flyer type of a player, but I'm not feeling greatly confident about it. And on DraftKings at 4,000, that takes away a lot of the incentive for playing him. At power forward, Kevin Love, we've seen power forwards really tear it against the Kings, like really get stuck into them. Love's coming off a 47-point game against the Pelicans. He's at 7,700. I'd have no problem with putting him into a lineup at 7,800 on DraftKings. Fine, he dropped 51 in the last game. He'd been a little bit quiet before that, but I feel pretty good about Kevin Love getting me 40 plus in this positive matchup against the Kings, given the type of player that he is. Anthony Tolliver hasn't taken any advantage of Rudy Gay being out, so I'm not interested in using him. And Willie Cauley-Stein's getting some extra minutes. And in fact, Cauley-Stein had 22 points in 21 minutes in the last game, which is obviously a fantastic return. Do I buy that? No, I don't think I need to use him here. Boogie, 10,500. Now, the Cavs are a negative influence for opposition centers, but Boogie's Boogie. I feel pretty good about Boogie getting the 10,500. But he's, like I just talked about, he's in that group with LeBron that I go, well, which one of those do I like better? It's such a marginal difference. It depends on what other positions I find the value at. If I've got a spot open at small forward, then LeBron goes in. If I couldn't find a good big man to put in, then Boogie goes in. And that's the way that I would look to build a lineup in that sort of a situation. As for Boogie, a $400 price dip. He's averaging 52 points over the last 5 games. At 10,500, that's totally fine in terms of value return. 10.8 on DraftKings, not quite as good, but I still think it's a good spot to use him. Tristan Thompson is struggling. He's at 4,700, and against Boogie, that is not an investment that I'll be willing to make. Let's move on to the next game. Now we're going to talk about the Miami Heat. They're taking on the Brooklyn Nets. Great matchup here for Miami. The other benefit of this matchup is they're not in a spot to necessarily spank the Nets, so the game might stay close. The Heat are favored by 4, and the total is 213.5 points here. Let's talk point guards. Point guards have been an awesome play against the Nets nearly every time that someone's gone up against them. Goran Dragic is at $7,000. He's averaging 35 over the last 3. Let's go ahead and get him for 35. I think that's a fair estimation of what he's going to be able to do. On DraftKings, he's at 7,300. Obviously, that's more expensive on a game with a lower salary cap, but I still don't hate it. I still think that you can use Goran going up against Brooklyn with this sort of a matchup. No concerns there at all. On the Nets side of things, Isaiah Whitehead and Spencer Dinwiddie both played well last game. Dinwiddie's been starting. He dropped 21 in the last game, but playing the Heat is the opposite of playing the Nets in terms of point guard value. They've been really tough on point guards. Not so much recently, that has eased up, but they have been tough on point guards. I have no ability to trust either Whitehead or Dinwiddie, but at 3,600 for Whitehead and 38 for Dinwiddie, there is GPP upside in those guys. And you hope they get to 25, which they can absolutely do, because Whitehead dropped 24 in the last game, and Dinwiddie we've seen have a couple of big games over the last 2-3 weeks. They can be GPP guys. I don't feel totally strong about it though. DraftKings, it's 34 for Spencer, and Whitehead comes in at, if I could find his name, he comes in at 3,300, but both just GPP options. Shooting guards, Wayne Ellington, one of the best GPP upside guys on the board. Horrific in cash, but with Tyler Johnson out, with Joshie Richardson out, he's going to see 30 plus minutes. Now, he didn't shoot the ball well in the last game, Ellington. Still put up 23 points in 33 minutes, which at 3,800 is absolutely fine. He's at 39 on DraftKings. He's playing against his former team if you want to buy into a revenge game theory. He's far from the most consistent player though, Wayne. I still think that there is GPP upside definitely in using him. I would feel nervous about using him in cash, but it depends on how the rest of my team was structured as to whether I would use him. Shawnee Kilpatrick at 42, I put him into the GPP zone as well. He had 28 in the last game, but had really struggled to get anywhere near that recently, so not a keen play. 46 on DraftKings is even less interesting to me over there, and Dion Waiters is crushing it. But of course, because he's crushing it, FanDuel bumped him up to $6,000. He's averaging 30.5 over the last 5, 34 over the last 3, and dropped 44 on the Warriors' head in the last game. But how much confidence can we have in Dion Waiters scoring 33 points from the field again and shooting 60%, which he's done in the last 2 games? How confident can we be in that? The answer that you should be repeating back to your podcast player is not very, because it's Dion Waiters. We know that this is not something that happens. He's at 6,600 on DraftKings, and that's just that is just an avert your eyes sort of price. It's a $900 price rise. Yes, he's playing the Nets, but it's Dion Waiters, man. You're saying, I believe Dion Waiters is getting me 33 points. And if that's a sentence you want to say out loud to yourself, well, you've got your own conscience to deal with. He's not a terrible play. Like on some of the other sites, on the Aussie sites, he's much cheaper and he's in a good spot there. But with those excessive price rises, it becomes a pretty tough situation. Randy Foye started the last game for the Nets. He had 7 points in 30 minutes, so I think it's safe to say we can ignore him in most spots. Bojan Bogdanovic, GPPs only, of course, with him and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson not touching the sides. I expect Karis LeVert is back, but at 4,300, I just don't see any really built-in upside in that sort of a play. But he has had some good games recently. I just don't think that it's going to come here. Jimmy Johnson. You know what? I'll give the music a rest today. Maybe I'll bring it back next time. Jimmy Johnson at 5,800 has definitely not been our martyr recently. He has definitely let us down, averaging 19 points over the last 3. I feel pretty good about Jim. Yeah, I think that he gets it back. I think the shot falls. I think that he can get you 30 plus in this game. I don't feel super confident, but I feel GPP confident about him. At center, Brook Lopez v. Hassan Whiteside. I don't really like either of these guys on FanDuel. We've got Brook priced at 7,300, and he's been putting up okay numbers, but not quite enough where I go, this is a great option. Whiteside's got a real positive matchup here. He's at 9,200. That's a $700 price rise, despite him having just 31 points in the last game. So the FanDuel guys have gone, he's got the Nets, let's just bump the shit out of his price. And that's what's happened. So really, I think it's hard to use both Hassan and Brook on FanDuel. Flick across to DraftKings and it's all on for both of these guys. 6,300 for Brook Lopez, sign me up. No problem with that. He's averaging 35 over the last 3, 37 over his last 5. At 6,300, that's it. That's done. Whiteside is at 7,900. Now, that's obviously a higher price, but centers going up against the Nets, they love it. He's got a good record against the Nets. He's averaging 42 the last 3 times. No reason why Whiteside can't go for 45 plus in this one. So, FanDuel, the price is not ideal. DraftKings, no problem. I think that's a worthwhile go for both Hassan Whiteside and Brook Lopez. All right, let's move on to the next game. We're going to talk about the Houston Rockets. They're taking on the Boston Celtics in Boston. The Rockets are favored by 2.5, and the total is a monster. It is 230. So we've got lots of things happening here. We've got fairly porous defenses. We've got one of the worst defenses in the NBA, and then we've got the Rockets. The total is 230. The spread is close. We've got the team that's better on the road, so that keeps the game closer. We've got all the ingredients here for stackability in GPPs. This is one of the ones that you should be targeting, as well as Lakers Portland as the last game of the night, and Golden State Charlotte to a degree as well. They're probably your 3 number one. Not that you can have 3 number ones, but they're your top 3 DFS stackable type of games. Let's talk point guards. Isaiah Thomas is still priced at a fairly decent chunk, 9,300. Now he gets Pat Beverly, which is always a concern for anybody going up against the Rockets, that you have to take on Patrick Beverly. That is a concern. But Thomas is obviously putting up good numbers. He had another 47 points today over on FanDuel. He's averaging 45 across the last 5. 9,300 is a decent chunk of change, and I'm not suggesting that he is a must-play guy by any stretch. But obviously, he just keeps churning out these numbers. I just don't really feel confident with using him in cash. He's at 93 on DraftKings as well. The scoring suits him a little bit more, so I'd feel a little bit happier. But Beverly, combined with that high price tag, are things that I would probably say someone else can use Isaiah and beat me with him, most likely. But that's the way that I would head with him. As for Beverly at 5,600, yeah, great matchup. Isaiah Thomas, I believe, I don't remember who tweeted it. I don't remember. Wish I remember who tweeted it, but Isaiah Thomas was last in the entire NBA in defensive real plus minus. So it's not good. And now Beverly gets that matchup. Can he turn it into anything? Well, he hasn't played that well recently, but I would definitely consider him an option at that cheaper price and feel okay that he's going to be a solid cash play at that line. Not loving it, but not hating it either. Marcus Smart, he's at 5,600. He dropped 27 today. He's averaging 28 in the last 3 games. A nice price for Smart on FanDuel at 5,600. Over on DraftKings at 6,000. That's one I'd want to forget. But 5,600 on FanDuel, I think there's definitely some use in Marcus Smart. At shooting guard, Jimmy Harden, 12,100 for Jim. You just put him in that group with Russ, with Yanni, with LeBron. You fill out your roster with these guys later on. He's in a pretty good matchup spot here, but that's a big salary. Now, he's been playing well, but averaging just under 55 over the last 3, which of course does not give us 5x value at 12,100. That's what makes him a harder guy to play. Yeah, same on DraftKings where he's at 12,300. Now, he is averaging 61 over there in the last 5, so the scoring suits him a little bit more over on DraftKings, and I'd feel a little bit better about using him there, but I'm far from scared from using him on FanDuel. I just don't think that he's an absolute lock. Again, with so many other high-priced studs going around, it depends on how you fit the rest of your guys into your team. And that's what's most important. It's not about ranking guys and I must have this high-priced guy when they're all, fractions different from each other. It's about how they fit together and about how they allow you to get other players into your squad. Eric Gordon's at 5,700. Good matchup, poor form. I think I'll pass on Eric Gordon. At 5,300 on DraftKings, I'm a little bit more happier there, but I would only use him as a GPP guy. Jay Crowder's hitting a ton of threes. He's at 5,600. He's averaging 28. I've got no issue with using Jay in cash. I'm not sure his GPP's upside is all that high, but he is fine on both sites where he sits at 5,600 on both of those sites. Trev Ariza, 5,300. Good game last time out for Trev, but hasn't quite been where he needs to be. I actually think this is a good spot for Ariza. It's a good matchup. He's got a good record. I think he bounces back after a few poor ones, not including the last game, but I think this is a good spot to use Trevor Ariza. Over on DraftKings, though, I don't really like it at 5,500. It feels just a little bit too high there, but I'm happier with him on FanDuel at 5,300. I think that's a fairer price or a more usable price, maybe to put it in a better term. Ryan Anderson's at 4,600. Well, we know there's zero chance of using Ryan Anderson in cash, but in tournaments, it's a great upside play. He can easily drop 35. He can easily drop 15, and that is exactly why he is GPPs only. It's a good matchup for him, so I would lean a little bit more heavily towards him than I would on other slates, but he is far from a absolutely must-play type of a guy. The Celtics power forwards, who knows? Amir Johnson could get 25, he could get 4. Kelly Olynyk might play 26, he might play 12. Jonas Jerebko could get 17, he might play 26. Tyler Zeller might come in. Jordan Mickey might play 12 minutes. Jaylen Brown might play at power forward, for Christ's sake. Look, anything could happen. And this is also a game that the Rockets are playing Ryan Anderson at the 4. So maybe we're seeing Jay Crowder guard him. Maybe we're seeing Jaylen Brown play more. Maybe we're seeing more James Young for whatever reason. That's a possibility. So these power forwards for Boston, just forget it. At center, Kelly Olynyk is always a risk. The projections really like him, but those minutes are very, very tenuous, so I don't feel confident with them at all. Al Horford, he's at 7,300. Good matchup for him. He's played well against Houston in the past. Love him on DraftKings at 6,800. Absolutely love that price. It's a fantastic price for him there. On FanDuel, I'm not quite as keen, but he can have some value. I would rather go with him on DraftKings, though. And Clint Capella, it's a risky proposition. Yes, he started the last game, played 22 minutes, but at 4,800, I need him getting 26 points. I need him getting around that mark, and I just don't feel confident with it at the moment. He's at 42 on DraftKings, so that's good for me. I feel pretty good about him getting the 24 points or so over there. I just don't feel as confident with him on FanDuel. The other centers, Nene, the table, Montrezl Harrell. Nene had a big one in the last game. 31 points in 22 minutes. I don't really think that we should feel much confidence in that happening, while the table Montrezl Harrell had -1 points. So yeah, it goes without saying that we're not feeling all that confident about Harrell getting enough minutes to be an impactful player in this game. We are heading on to the next one now. We're going to look at the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. No spread out for this one. I guess we're waiting on the status of Anthony Davis. He is probable with a thigh contusion that caused him to miss the last game. And Tyreek Evans, who played limited minutes in the last time out, is dealing with a sprained ankle. So I guess that's why he didn't play as many minutes as what we would have hoped in that game without Anthony Davis. It goes without saying, if Anthony Davis is out, Terrence Jones gets the bulk of the numbers. Now, Jonesy's FanDuel salary has jumped to 5,800. If Davis is playing, there is no way that you can use that. It's just no way. On DraftKings, he's at 7,100. That's a lot. It's a very lot. Now, he had a 64-point game in the last one, Terrence Jones. But there is no way that he is doing that again. Do I expect Terrence Jones to get 3,800 if he starts in place of Davis? That feels like a little bit of a sucker bet that a lot of people will be like, Jones is out, Davis is out, let's go on Jones. And they go, and they don't think 7,000 and go, that's a shit price, because it is a shit price. That I would find it hard to leave him out, to be honest. But it's a price that is monstrous, and it makes it really hard for him to return value at that sort of a price. This is if Davis is out, of course. If Tyreek is out, we're going to see more Bud, more Etuan, more Langston Galloway, and probably a little bit of Tim Frazier as well. But that's not going to impact us for DFS. Russ Westbrook is at 12,500, similar to Jimmy Harden, similar to LeBron. Yeah, this is a guy that at 12,500 on FanDuel can easily return that value. But there's also risk involved in it. How's the defense going to go of the Pelicans? Well, they just yielded 49 points to Kyrie Irving, so I think Russ is going to have his way. He's always a hard guy to fade, Russ, but that price makes it justifiable, because you're needing 62, 63 points, which to get that or expect that as an average is pretty tough. But it's not a horrible play. Again, it depends where you've got the value in the other spots. Over on DraftKings, Russ is at 12,800. Now, the scoring loves him. He's averaging 65 across the last 5. It's a $1,300 price rise, though. I feel like I would only consider him as a GPP option. I wouldn't feel great in cash, because I just don't. I feel that a lot of people might start to fade him at that price, especially with some of the other big name guys on the board. It's just getting too high to me to be a totally viable scenario. As for Drew Holiday, he's at 6,800. He dropped 62 of his own in the last game. He's been putting up some decent numbers. The Westbrook defense is not something that I'm really concerned about with Drew, so I think that he is, not the best player, but I think he's a decent guy to take a look at. Whereas Drewy Holiday on DraftKings, played well, but 7,600, man, I'll pass on that. I'm just not aboard getting Drew Holiday at that sort of a salary. Shooting guards. Vic Oladipo just quietly churning out numbers. He's at 5,700 on FanDuel. He had 28 in the last game. He's averaging 27. He's at 55 on DraftKings. He had 29 the last game. No issue with using him at all. He's just a solid cash play that could get you 30, but could get you 27. And at that price, that is absolutely fine. And that's why I like Victor Oladipo here. I think it's a good spot to use him in, and you should feel pretty confident you're getting at least 26 points pretty much every time he goes out there. So it's a good spot for him. Etuan Moore's not doing a huge amount. Langston Galloway is, though. He's at 3,800, Langston, and he's putting up good numbers. He's averaging 24 over the last 3, and if Tyreek is out, he's at 32 on DraftKings, by the way, which is brilliant. Then load up your Langston Galloways. It's a great way to be able to afford Russ. And that's one of those scenarios that I was talking about earlier. If we see that Tyreek's out, or even if we're not, putting Galloway in there, getting 25 points at 3,200, that enables you to go and get Russ at 12,800. And if he gets 57 points, it doesn't kill you, because you've got some value at the other spot, which is what Galloway provides. So he's someone to definitely pay some attention to. Bud Hield, just a GPP option. Andre Robertson at 3,700. I have zero confidence in Robertson at all. While Dante Cunningham and Solomon Hill, it is the matchup of the zeros at small forward, and not the number zero, the offensive talent. At power forward, Enes Kanter, 6,200 for Enes. That's a fair chunk of salary. I love it on DraftKings, though. He's down to 5,400, a $900 price drop. That is fine. Let's get behind that. He's averaging 32 across the last 5. Yeah, Steven Adams is back, but Kanter gets 20. He's getting 29 minutes with or without Adams. And he had an off game in the last one. Kanter still dropped 20. I got no reason to think that we're not going to see him out there for 27 plus. It could always go wrong if Anthony Davis starts torching him, but he's probably going to have to match up on guys like Dante Cunningham or Solomon Hill. And who are they torching on? They wouldn't torch me on defense. Yeah, maybe they would. But I think he's safe in that sort of a zone, especially if the Thunder start closing with Twin Towers, which I think they will a lot of the time. That also might force Alvin Gentry to bring Omer Ashik in, which is nothing but a positive for the Thunder as well. So I do like Kanter at 54. At 62 on DraftKings, I'm a little bit hesitant with that, but not much. I think it's still a decent play. Now, Anthony Davis, the skepticism should be there. I would look at him as a GPP guy. That's it. 10,900 for Davis is a good price. 10.4 on DraftKings, an even better price. But I don't feel comfortable about using him in cash games just at this point, especially because we don't know whether he is actually playing yet. And yeah, I'm just not confident that he actually even gets through the whole game. But the upside's that he could easily drop a 60 on their heads and be a great play at that salary. Steve Adams is at 5,500. Didn't really light the world on fire in his return. He did have 4 blocks, but not a lot else. Yeah, 5,500 is a solid situation for Steve at his level of play, but I'm not totally loving it. 5,000 on DraftKings, yeah, that's fine. I like that on DraftKings at 5,000. I think there's definite value in using Steve Adams there, whereas the other centers are non-existent in this game. All right, let's move on to the next one. We are looking at the Philadelphia 76ers. They are taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. Unfortunately, we don't get to see Embiid versus Giannis because Joel is out. We don't know the status of Jahlil Okafor, who missed today's game with that knee soreness. So if Jahlil is out, then it's all aboard Nerlens. If Jahlil is in, we don't know what Brett Brown will do. We don't know if he will start Noel and play him 28 and play Jahlil 20. That's what he should do. I don't know whether he will do it or not, but if he does that, then Noel is an awesome option. And I do tend to think that he will lean that way, but I'm not 100% sure. And if Okafor is out, then man, just get right stuck into Noel. And that would be the perfect example of what I'm talking about, especially in your cash games. Get the guy in with the brilliant value and then try and build around from that. And that's the sort of guy that Noel can very easily be in this one. The Bucks are favored by a whopping 11.5 points, and the total here is 208. Let's talk point guards. Matt Dellavedova has played over 30 minutes in both his games since returning to the starting lineup. He's at 3,900. He had 27 in the last game. If he's going to play 30 plus minutes and at 3,900, then I've got no issue with using him. I think that he can be used. He's scoring well. He's getting assists. At that sort of salary, no problem. He's at 4,100 on DraftKings as well. No concern with using Matt at that salary. I think he's, again, one of the better, cheaper options that's out there on the board. As for Brogo at 5,200, too highly priced, not interested. 5,100 for him over on DraftKings. Not a bad game in the last one from Brogo, but I just don't feel confident with the way that he's limited by his minutes coming off the bench. He's still getting 30, but it's not 35. And that's what, at that extra $1,000 or $1,200 over Daly, I will take Daly if he's getting more minutes as well. So that's the way that I think that breaks down. TJ McConnell struggled a little bit in this game, I guess because the return of Sergio Rodriguez. Whether McConnell goes back to 30 plus or they play a 28-20 split like they did in this game remains to be seen. He's at 5,500, and you can't really take that risk at 5,500 in a cash game. In a GPP, you can, and he does have some upside, TJ, but you can't take that risk in cash formats. And he's at 55 on DraftKings as well. So same story holds water there. We're not using Spanish chocolate either. Shooting guards: Sauce Castillo, Gerald Henderson, Tone Snell, Luawu Cabarro. Like, none of those guys should be doing anything. Bob Covers at 5,400. He's averaging 33 across the last 3. The matchup is brilliant for him. 56 on DraftKings. I don't think you should really have too much of a concern with using Robert Covington. He's been consistent recently. He's playing big minutes again, and the production is there. He could very easily shit the bed, I know that, but I feel pretty confident about Bob Cov putting up some good numbers. Mirza Teletovic back in the rotation ahead of Mick Beasley. I don't see there's any reason to really consider using him. Nerlens is at 4,100. He had 45 points today, so that's just a casual 11x value, and that's the sort of thing that you want. I wouldn't be anticipating 40 points from him again, but he should be able to nudge 29 or 30 in it, and at 4,100, that's smashing value. And that's being, I guess, somewhat conservative. If Okafor is in and they say Okafor's starting, I would ease off Noel. But this is me assuming that Noel will start regardless of Okafor's status. And he will put up good numbers. Because the other thing we know is that big men against the Bucks, they have a field day. Nerlens is at 4,300 over on DraftKings as well. Ersan is at 6,000. A poor game from him today, but it was foul-plagued. So I'm okay with going back to the Ersan well here. Former team, he plays well without Embiid usually. He still had 23 points in 22 minutes today. So we're talking about over a point per minute production. So he is fine to consider in this game. While Jabari Parker's really crushing it, averaging 41 across the last 3. He's at 7,900. That's a big salary. And it's actually a little bit of a negative matchup against Philadelphia for Jabari. And it's a $500 price rise. So all those things sort of tilt the scales against him. On DraftKings, I look at him and he's 7,200. And that's where I go, yeah, that's good. That's something I can get behind, where he's averaging 44 across the last three. 7,200 is a pretty reasonable price for me to use him. So, yeah, no issue with Jabari on DraftKings. At centre, Greg Munro, while he was back in business, he had 35 points in 27 minutes. And being able to trust Jason Kidd is one of the toughest things to do in all of fantasy. But if we're feeling that, then 5,400 on FanDuel, or more importantly, 4,700 on DraftKings, he should be able to smash that, especially that DraftKings number. But how can we trust Kidd? Will John Henson remain out of the rotation? Will Plumlee play 20 and Munro play 28? That's what I think will happen, but we don't know it. And that makes him a little bit risky and more of a GPP type of a guy. Whereas a guy like Noel, you can go, well, if Okafor's out, then he's getting 29 minutes. He's getting 30 minutes. There's no worries about that. But for Munro, Jason Kidd is always prone to making the wrong decision. So he could easily do that again and play Greggy 17 minutes and watch the Bucks lose again, as has happened plenty of times already this season. As for Miles Plumlee, minimum salary, had 18 points in the last game. It came on a little bit of skewed offensive production, but in a positive matchup without Embiid, on DraftKings, especially at $3,000, Miles Plumlee is not the worst option. He's not the best, not the worst. Consider him, but not too much. All right, let's go on to the next game. We're halfway through these games now. The Golden State Warriors and the Charlotte Hornets. The Warriors are favored by 9.5 points on the road. The total is 221.5, and a few Charlotte injuries have cropped up. Frank Kaminsky is dealing with a nasal fracture. He is questionable. Cody Zeller is dealing with a quad contusion. He is questionable. Jeremy Lamb is dealing with that foot problem still. He is questionable. And Brian Roberts is ill. Not that he would be playing anyway, but that's another injury to add to the list. Let's talk point guards. Steph back in Charlotte, back in Carolina. He's at 8,900, Steph. Good, really good matchup for him. But is he the best option that's out there on the board? I don't feel all that comfortable with using Steph. And it's been very few times this year that Steph has actually paid back his value. Then that's something we do need to pay attention to. Now, on DraftKings at 8,500, that's a better situation. That is something there I think that you can use him. But I would really only look towards Steph in a GPP play. I wouldn't be really too keen on him in cash game scenarios. As for Kemba Walker, well, he gets the Steph defense, and he was pretty poor in the last game, Kemba. Still dropped 33 points. But now at 7,800, can he repay that value? He can, of course. I don't think it's likely, and I don't feel all that confident about using Kemba Walker in this situation. Shooting guard, Klay Thompson, always a GPP guy, dropped 34 in the last game, but could easily just drop 23 in this one. 6,200, decent matchup, but have no faith in Klay whatsoever to do it consistently, so GPP's only for Klay. And Nick Batum, who has been struggling a bit with his shot, his salary is down to 7,100. I would have liked to have seen it come down more. Obviously, it hasn't. So he's going to be a tough guy to rely upon, I think, at that sort of a salary. He's even more on DraftKings at 7,400, which is very far from appealing. So I'll pass on Nick Batum. While Marco Bellinelli had a bit of a breakout. He had 27 points in the last game at 4,100. And if these chunk of guys are out, Frank the Tank, Cody Zeller, we're going to see Michael Kidd-Gilchrist play down at the 4, and that's going to open up a lot more minutes for Bellinelli at the 3. So obviously you can use our what-if scenarios over on Basketball Monster to check out how things would be adjusted if those guys are out, and you'll see Bellinelli jump up in the pecking order of guys who are going to be useful plays if that happens to go down. So that's sort of the situation I'd be considering him in. At small forward, Mick Kidd-Gilchrist, well, the same story. Kaminsky's out, Zala's out. We're going to see more Kidd-Gilchrist. At 5,300, he's not a great value play, and at 5,200 on DraftKings is not fantastic. But if he's forced into a spot where he's playing permanently at the 4, then he's going to get more rebounds. He'll block some shots and shoot close to the rim, maybe score some more points. I feel okay about him just in that sort of a scenario, and really that's about it. Kev Durant at 10,300 hasn't been crushing it lately, so the salary's dipped by $300, but you should feel pretty good about Durant at least approaching 50 points. And over on DraftKings, he is at 9,400. That is a great price for Kevin Durant. That's a $600 price drop. I think you should be smashing that. That makes him one of the better options on the board. There are other good options out there, but that is a fantastic price for Kevin Durant, and I think you should be looking at that fairly closely in a lot of your lineups. Power forward Draymond, 7,700, has been underperforming, averaging just 28 in the last 3 games. A $500 price drop has come his way now, and he's at 75 on DraftKings as well. No issue with using Draymond here, especially if the Hornets are losing a lot of these guys. No problem. I think he's a good play. Frank the Tank, if Zeller is out, I would use Frank the Tank in a GPP. That's assuming he plays, but at $4,000, he has these games where he goes off, and if Cody is out, then go for it. If Cody Zeller's out, Spencer Hawes needs to be in basically every lineup, because he is a guy that will just come in, play 30 minutes, get 27 points, and be like 3,500. So if Zeller is out, then you've got to look at Spencer Hawes in all those situations. Marvin Williams will also get some more minutes if Frank Kaminsky's out. He's at $5,000 though. I don't know if I feel that's on FanDuel. He's at 48 on DraftKings. I don't feel confident with Marvin Williams being able to exceed that in any other situation. But if, say, Zeller and Kaminsky are both out, I think you do have to look at Marv and say, all right, then I can consider it. And I should feel confident, or decently confident, about him getting a 28-point performance in that sort of a scenario. At center, look, really hard to use these centers against the Warriors, especially Cody Zeller. But as I said, if Hawes is the guy, if Zeller's out, then Hawes, I'm all for using Spencer Hawes. No problem with using him even in this matchup. JaVale McGee. We've got to talk about JaVale McGee here for a sec. He's at minimum salary, and he's averaging 16 points over the last 3. He had 20 in the last game, and he's getting minutes in preference to Kevon Looney, Anderson Varejao, James Michael McAdoo, Damian Jones. He's getting a lot of these backup minutes, or majority of them. Would you be ballsy enough to play a $3,000 JaVale McGee and hope for 20 points? It's a pretty ballsy move, but it might work. You get 20 points out of JaVale, that's 7x. He has had, in the last 5 games, a 19.8 point performance and a 21.5 point performance. So 2 games that are getting 6 or 7x value, or getting over 6x value. And that's not a bad return in a GPP. Again, fit some other guys in. Get Durant, get Russ, get Jim maybe. Get some of these other players in. It's a ballsy move though. Zaza at 3,900. He's been putting up good numbers himself. No issue with using Zaza. 26 points over the last 3 for Pachulia. Over on FanDuel with him, it's a little bit different. He's up to 4,300. That takes away the appeal. But on DraftKings, where Zaza is sitting at that lower salary, 3,900, no issue. Really, really could be used if you structure your lineup in a smart way to get that extra value in. Where are we now? Toronto taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are favored by 6 points here. Oh no, did I go to... Yeah, no. I was going to say, I've got my screens out of order, but we'll do Toronto, Memphis first. All right, let's go into Toronto and Memphis. Talk about them now. As I said, the Grizzlies are favored by 6. Patrick Patterson might not be available to rest. He's got to rest that minutes restriction up. He played his first game back today, had no restriction, but then did have a restriction, and then might not play again, so who knows what's going on in Toronto. Obviously, if Pat is out, it's going to be more Bebe Nogueira, who's going to get some of those extra minutes. Jared Salinger's not going to be ready to take on the extra responsibility. DeMar DeRozan is out again, so we're going to get Norm Powell starting once more, I would imagine, because Powell was very, very good in his start. Let's talk point guards. Kyle Lowry. He's got the Memphis matchup. He's got $8,400. He's got extra stress with DeMar DeRozan out. Yeah, he's going to get some increase in usage, but is it going to be enough for him to go and get 43, 44 points? In a Memphis matchup, I reckon I'll go a different direction than Kyle. Yes, you could go revenge game narrative against Memphis, but I don't think that Kyle Lowry's in an awesome spot here. He's at 88 on DraftKings, which is horrendous to me. I don't really want to spend 8,800 on Kyle Lowry whatsoever. As for Mick Conley at 7,600, well, he gets the Kyle Lowry defense, which a lot of the time is not ideal for the opponent, but at the moment, it's actually a boost for a player like Mike Conley. He hasn't been playing sensationally, averaging 36 in the last 5, which is alright at 7,600, it's not far off, but only 31 over the last 3. I would be happier taking a punt on Conley than on Lowry, to be honest, in a GPP, and save that extra $1,200 or whatever the difference is between the two, and $1,600 on DraftKings, and be a bit happier there. So I think that Conley is a very good play, and I reckon he's going to be an under-owned option as well. At shooting guard, well, it's all about Norm Powell today. He dropped 30 points in his 39 minutes, and he's a $3,500 player. on FanDuel and 3,600 on DraftKings. He is one of those guys like Nerlens Noel that I'll put in my lineup and go, let's build around these guys. Let's see where we can find the rest of the value. Powell has actually dipped in salary on FanDuel. He's dipped down to minimum salary and crushed it. He's going to be owned in like 80% of cash lineups, but that means you have to have him. That's basically, now GPPs, maybe you don't, but you pretty much have to have him in cash games. Tone Allen at 4,400. I just don't feel like I can trust Tone Allen's production, so I'm not into him there. Small forward Terry Ross, same story as Powell. He's at 3,700 over on FanDuel. The 4,500 that he's on in DraftKings makes him less appealing, but he is still interesting. But I would look at him as a GPP-only player on DraftKings. On FanDuel at that 3,700, with DeRozan out, he's normally a GPP-only type of guy, but at 3,700, with the extra minutes, I feel okay about using him in cash in that scenario. It's not always the case, but I do feel that in this one. Chandler Parsons had a big game in the last one, 26 points, and at 3,700, if you use Chandler Parsons, you'd be laughing. But being able to do that or having the foresight to do it, it's pretty much impossible. Do we think that Chandler Parsons' minutes are going to be back at 22 again? Yes, I think they will be, but I don't think he's getting 26 points. So at 3,700, he actually does come into play here, Chandler, but I don't feel totally confident about using him. Power forwards, JaMychal Green, 4,500 for JaMychal. A decent matchup a really decent matchup for him, but he is up and down. He's a GPP guy without much upside, and that's never exciting. And at 4,400 for him over on DraftKings, it's a similar story, whereas Zach Randolph just constantly priced too high. 5,900, I want zero to do with that. He is on DraftKings at 54, which is better, but it's still not what I'm keen on using in this sort of a slate. Centers, Marc Gasol, 8,400. Putting up some very good numbers. And normally I'll say 8,400 is way too high for Gasol. I'm probably going to say it again here, but he's averaging 44 across the last three, which is fantastic. I just don't really think that I feel that confident about him doing it again. So not interested in Gasol at 8,400. Jonas Valanciunas at 5,800. If Patterson's out, I'm okay with it. If Patterson's in, I'm a little bit concerned that he gets limited. So I would look to JV if Patterson's out. If he is in, I think he's a stay away type of a player. As for Jared Sullinger, we're not going to be using him. Bebe is the guy to look at, though. If Pat's out at 3,800, Bebe Nogueira absolutely has upside. He's at 4,000 on DraftKings, no problem. In fact, on FanDuel, I would even consider him a tournament option, even if Patterson plays. I would feel alright about using Bebe in case they go and limit JV and put some more minutes for Bebe in there. That would be a possibility against Gasol, but he could also get just torn apart by Gasol too. So no cash reliability, but he does gain appeal if Patterson happens to sit this one out. Let's go on to the next game now. We're going to talk Atlanta. They are traveling to take on the Chicago Bulls. The Hawks are favored by 1.5 points. The total is 203 for this game. Injury-wise, nothing for us to pay attention to, which is always good news. Let's talk point guards, and for the Bulls, let's ignore point guards. Let's look at Dennis Schroeder for the Hawks. He's at 6,600. He's got a good matchup here. Actually, he's got a fantastic matchup. I love using Dennis Schroeder. I think he's a great option. He's at 62 on DraftKings. Really fantastic stuff. Now, oppositions can normally take advantage of the Hawks' point guard situation. Unfortunately, the Bulls' point guard situation is Jaren Grant, Rajon Rondo, and a DMCW. Lots of initials there. Nothing to really love. Jaren Grant's had one good game this year when he started against Portland, but I have no faith that he will be worth a look. At 3,600, you can absolutely just take a punt and go, you know what, he's a starting point guard. Maybe he gets hot. Maybe Fred Hoiberg sticks with him. But every common sense fiber in your head should be saying, I don't want to use Jaren Grant here. But you can make an argument for upside play there. At shooting guard, Dwayne Wade had 47 today. He's at $7,000. But remember, second half of a back-to-back here. What does Wade do? Does he play at all? And is he limited? If he plays at 7,000, now I feel okay about using Dwayne Wade at that price, given he will be handling the ball a bit. I don't expect the 7 steals to come again, and I reckon he can probably do better, but he's not a terrible guy. 6,400 on DraftKings makes him really appealing with a $400 price dip. He's averaging 37 across the last 5 there, so I think there's value in Wade, especially on DraftKings. Timmy Hardaway is a GPP guy as always. At small forward, Tabo, Yeah, not really feeling it with Tabo. Yeah, the minutes are alright, the production's decent, but there's no upside with him at the moment. He's just not doing anything. But if we remember the last time he played the Bulls, he tore him apart. Can it happen again? Yeah. Will it? Probably not. 3,600 for Tabo. Yeah, put him in a GPP. That's about it. Jim Butler at 9,500. That's a lot. But even in a game where he wasn't great today, he still put up 42 points, and that's the sign of a guy who's a fairly decent star. 9,100 on DraftKings for Jim. He's fine without standing out as being spectacular. While Kent Bazemore had 34 points in the Hawks' last win. That accounted to 34 points. I believe he scored 25 points on the court. He is a GPP guy, though. There's no ability to trust him despite the fact that he's going against the Bulls. Paul Zipser, Dougie McDermott, no way of believing in those guys. Taj Gibson is not working for me. He's just not playing enough. He's not scoring enough. He's not doing anything enough. No interest in using Taj in this one. Well, Nick Mirotic, the same story. I like Paul Millsap, though. 8,300 for Millsap. I should feel pretty good about him getting 40 points. If we look at him over on DraftKings, he's at 7,800. Again, really, really good stuff from Millsap. I think that's a pretty decent option there. Centers. Dwight is at $7,000. I feel alright about Dwight, using him at 7,000 against the Bulls. I don't know if there's a huge amount of GPP upside, but at 7,000 on both sites, I think that he can be used in cash, and you should feel confident. Robin Lopez, you shouldn't feel confident, and Chris Felicio is not a DMP, he's a GPP option. He had 24 points today at minimum salary on FanDuel, and he's at minimum salary on DraftKings as well, and obviously repaid that value. The problem is he's going up against Dwight Howard, but Robin Lopez is going up against Dwight Howard too, so maybe Lopez gets into foul trouble, maybe he gets torn apart, and they have to switch Chris in there, and that enables him to get his third consecutive double-digit rebounding game, and that would make him a GPP option at minimum salary. All right, let's start wrapping this up now. We've got 2 games left. We've got the New York Knicks taking on the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks are favored by 2, and the total here is 204. Andrew Bogut and Wes Matthews are both listed as questionable. Initially, Matthews, they said, yeah, he's going to play, but he's been downgraded to questionable. Bogut has obviously missed the last couple of weeks with a hamstring issue. If Bogut returns, it takes some of the upside away from Seth Curry. It takes away Dwight Powell. It takes away some Dorian Finney-Smith. If Wes happens to miss, it bumps Seth back up. It bumps Dorian Finney-Smith back up as well. We know that JJ Barea is out also. At point guard, Derrick Rose played a very, very big amount of minutes in the last game, 40 minutes in that one. He is priced at 6,700, and despite playing these big minutes, it's not necessarily yielding big performances, averaging just 31 over the last 3. The matchup here is not ideal. We know that the Mavericks slow it down. We know that they are a negative impact on point guards. I'll leave Derrick Rose alone at that over $6,000 price tag. That is not really interesting me at all. He's at 6,000 on DraftKings, and that's not bad. On DraftKings at 6,000, that's fine. I would be okay with taking a punt on him as a GPP guy there, but not on FanDuel. I'm not as interested. Brandon Jennings is playing some extra minutes, but it's not enough for me to be really caring at all. In fact, this game, there's not a lot happening from a DFS point of view in this entire game. Seth Curry at 41. If both those guys are out, then Seth Curry at 41, both Wes and Bogut. If they're both out, Seth at 41 becomes a very good play. But even with Bogut out recently, Seth Curry's averaging just 20 points over the last 3 games, and at 4,100, that's sort of where you need to be, but it's far from appealing. And on DraftKings, he's at 4,700, and that takes a lot of the excitement out of him. Courtney Lee has no excitement. And Justin Holiday had a big one in the last game, 27 points. And at 3,700, you'd be loving it. But being able to trust what Hornacek does, that sentence doesn't exist. You can't do that. You can't trust what Jeff is going to do. Small forwards, the pencil, Harrison Barnes, 6,200 for Barnesy. Has been a little bit down. I don't feel like this is a great option. It's a decent spot. Pretty good, but with the way that Barnes has been playing, I'm just not really feeling it as being a viable alternative. While Mallow is now at $8,000. He had 33 in the last game, including a game winner. There are better options out there on the board, no doubt. But if we head to DraftKings and look at Mallow at 7,300, that's a $700 price tip. That is fine. That is what I'm looking at. Yeah, the matchups are negative, but that's a really good spot to use Carmelo Anthony there. Mindaugas Kuzminskas, yeah, he's dropped right off. And Dorian Finney-Smith, even if Wes is out, I wouldn't be rushing to grab Finney-Smith because he's just not a great stat producer. Dirk Nowitzki's at 5,500, has not been producing very well. His minutes have been down. I don't feel confident about using Dirk at 5,500. nor do I feel confident about.
Percentages.
He is at 6,700, so the salary is way down. And it's because he's averaging under 19 points in the last 5. Way down. It's a bad matchup, but this is the perfect time to go contrarian with Kristaps and put him in a GPP with this low salary, and he can easily drop a 40, a 45 even. He can go huge, we know that. This is the perfect opportunity. Now, using him in cash is a tricky scenario, but I love this for Kristaps in a GPP scenario. Dwight Powell, if Bogut's out, still no. I don't even know why I mentioned that. At centre, do we look at Andrew Bogut? The answer to that is a resounding no. And what do we do with the Knicks centres? The answer is I've got no idea. Billy Hernan-Gomez had 35 in the last game, but he probably plays 2 minutes in this one. Who knows? Billy is up to 4,500 on FanDuel. He's at 34 on DraftKings. At 34 on DraftKings, you have to love that as a GPP play because he's playing well and maybe he forces himself into minutes. On FanDuel at 4,500, yeah, there's some upside, but I wouldn't say that it's a high priority one. But I do like it over on DraftKings. Now, Kyle O'Quinn and Joakim Noah. O'Quinn always has got upside at 3,900. You could put him in a contrarian GPP lineup, put one with Hernan-Gomez, one with O'Quinn, and see how that pans out. That's a fine strategy. As for Noah, with Porzingis back, Noah just doesn't see the playing time or put up the numbers that are necessary. I apologise, this podcast has gone for so long. My throat is feeling it, but I didn't realise the time was that long. The Lakers and Portland rounds things out. The Blazers are favoured by 10. The total is 220. Eddie Davis is listed as doubtful for the Blazers. D'Angelo Russell out for the Lakers. Let's talk point guards. Dame Lillard's at 8,300. You look at it and go, the matchup screams brilliant. It's against the Lakers. He should torch them, but we know what Lillard is at this point. He's an inconsistent performer who occasionally will drop 50, but more often will drop 35. And at 8,300, that's not enough. It makes him a GPP guy for sure, with that upside in a good matchup, but I don't want to trust Dame Lillard in a cash game play. Now, on DraftKings, it's a little bit safer just with the 3-point scoring. He's averaging 42 across the last 5, but he's also up to 8,600. But I'd feel better about Lillard on DraftKings in cash. I still don't feel all that comfortable about using him in cash games in general. With D'Angelo Russell out in the last game, Jordan Clarkson played 25 minutes and scored 11 points. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case, but FanDuel's bumped his salary by $1,000, so that turns me off. I don't really see the great need to use him. At 4,900 on DraftKings, the same story. I don't really feel there's a lot to love there, especially if the Lakers are going to go back and start Brandon Ingram at point guard, which is what they did in the last game. Lou Williams was also in a great spot to succeed, and he did not. He's at 5,700. That's risky. I don't really see much upside in that price either, so not keen on using Lou. He's at 58 on DraftKings. Not bad on DraftKings. I would consider him a GPP type of a player in that scenario. CJ McCollum at 8,100. He had 48 in the last game, but it had been a few games where he'd been really down. That's just too high for me. I don't really see any use in using CJ at that sort of salary. Yes, he exceeded it in the last game, but he'd been poor for the last 4 or 5 games prior to that. Alan Crabb's always a GPP guy, but even now I don't feel too much upside in using him. As for Ingram, he played 36 minutes in the last game, scored 6 points. He can have some decent games, but him running the point guard is different from him playing Luol Deng's spot. So at 4,400 for Ingram, I don't even really see it being a good upside play. Over on DraftKings, he's at 46. The same. I just don't really see that as being an awesome situation. Mo Harkless he scored 1 point in the last game. He seems to be in a much suppressed role, so not keen. Evan Turner at 4,400. Now, that's not bad, Evan Turner at 4,400. I can get behind using that if he's going to play 30 minutes. So if we hear that he's remaining in the starting lineup, I'm okay with Turner at 44. I don't love it, but I am okay with it and feel decent confidence. Luol Deng is back. He's at 4,400, and we won't be using him. Power forwards. Aminu onto the bench, but played 37 minutes in the last one. At 5,400, I have no interest in using him. And Julius Randle at 6,500 has been fairly poor recently. He gets a great matchup here against Portland, but he's been so poor that I will restrict him to just being a tournament guy, and that's it. It's a great tournament play, but I think it's a fairly horrible cash play given just how out of sync he and the Lakers have been in general. Noah Vonleh is a minimum salary player. He's averaging 19 points across the last 3 and started the last 2. $3,000, get me 21 points, then you can have a spot on a roster. It's a perfect matchup for Vonleh. He had 21 in 17 minutes in the last game. Nothing wrong with throwing him into a GPP, and normally I'm totally against Vonleh, but he is absolutely in a decent spot here. Let's round it out with the centres. Tim Mozgov, pass. Ivica Zubats, pass. Mason Plumlee, love it. Great matchup for Plumlee, 6,500. He's going a little bit under the radar because his numbers have been a little bit suppressed, but this is a chance for him to go for 35. Man, he could go for 40 points here quite comfortably, and I feel good about his floor in this game as well. No concerns with Plumlee. 6,200 on DraftKings again. Should really smash it, and has got a real ability to go massive. Centers have absolutely killed the Lakers so far, or recently. No concerns with Mason Plumlee whatsoever. All right, let's wrap this guy up. Let's talk about the picks of the day now. We'll go to FanDuel. Matty Dellavedova, 3,900. Goran Dragic against the Nets at 7,000. And Dame Lillard, as I mentioned, a GPP guy, a great GPP guy, but a GPP guy nonetheless, at 8,300. At shooting guard, Norm Powell, 35. Self-explanatory. Klay Thompson at 62 as a GPP option, as I touched on. And Giannis at 10,400. Small forward Terry Ross at 3,700. Bob Covers at 54. And LeBron at 10,700. Power forward Nerlens Noel, 41. Kevin Love, 77. Paulie Millsap, 83. And rounding it out with Bebe at 3,800. Mason Plumlee, 65. And Boogie at 10,500. On DraftKings, Dally's at 41. Schroeder is at 62. And Russ at 12,800. Shooting guard Normie Powell, 3,600. Vic Oladipo, 55. And Jimmy Harden, 12,300. At small forward, Bob Cove sits at 56. And LeBron at $10,000. Nerlens Noel, a power forward, 43. Kevin Love, 78. And Boogie at 10,800. And at centre, Greggy Munro as a GPP option, as I touched on. He's at 47. Mace Plumlee at 62. And Tony Davis at 10,400. Let's head across to the Aussie sites now. On Moneyball, Daly is at 36. Drew is at 62. Drew Holiday. And Russ at 12,600. The shooting guards, Norm Powell, 35. Dion Wade is at 5,000. Much better price. Way too high on the American sites. Like that on FanDuel, on Moneyball, sorry. And Jimmy Harden, 12,500. Terry Ross at 39. Bob Covers at 56. And LeBron is at 10,300. At power forward, Ryan Anderson, as a GPP play, of course, 4,700. Kevin Love at 74. And Paulie Millsap against the Bulls at 8,300. And at centre, minimum salary, Nerlens Noel. How could you not? Greg Monroe, 55 as a GPP. And Hassan Whiteside, 84. On DraftStars, Garrett Temple's at 62, Mike Conley's at 13,100, and Isaiah Thomas at 16,450. Shooting guard Normie Powell, 50-50, Lou Williams, 9,850, and Jimmy Harden, 21,900. Wayne Ellington at 5,100 as a GPP small forward. The minutes will be there for him, but whether he converts remains to be seen. Jimmy Johnson, 9,450, and LeBron at 2,700. 20,700, that's better. Noah Vonleh, minimum salary. Nerlens Noel, 8,550, and Boogie's at 17,250. And let's round it out with a pair of Plumleys. Miles Plumlee at 5,000, Mason Plumlee at 11,650, and Kevin Love at 15,500. We're done, guys. Monster podcast today. Apologise about the length. Hopefully you found some stuff informative in it. Hopefully you got some good information. If you did, let me know. Retweet it. Tell your friends. Share it on Facebook. Do whatever you need to get the word out there. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_Beeble. And of course, check out Basketball Monster and Fantrax and our other sponsors who have sponsored us through the week. SeatGeek with a promo code LOFantasy for $20 back off your first purchase. And Lord Timepieces, where you can go ahead and get yourself a watch, get 10% off, free shipping worldwide by using that promo code LOFantasy as well. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Quinn Snyder.